Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Q&A. Lots of good discussion on the last episode we did, mostly, let's be honest, people being salty about my opinions on the raid story and the fact that we don't necessarily have an easy mode for the raids. I'm sure we'll have more talks about this in future episodes. I don't want to particularly linger on it, 2 Q&As in a row. I do think you guys have some interesting points, but for now, the footage in the background for today is I actually decided to try playing a new character. I mean, I haven't restarted the game since, when I made my Ranger most recently and I was playing without my minimap. Things are a little different to how I remembered. But, hey, I've got to keep up with those new player impressions, right? Otherwise, you just drift further and further out of touch. In any case, got a bunch of questions for you guys today. The first one comes from Blood, who said, which is a scary username, by the way, who says, what is your opinion on Living World Season 1 WP? Now, I picked this question. This may seem like a really basic question. It may seem like something you guys don't want to hear about, but I do think it's quite important in the current climate where so many people seem to be idolizing and putting on their nostalgia goggles over Season 1 of the Living World. What happened, guys? Yes, I know. We're in a content drought, and any little bit of content, like the reintroduction of Super Adventure Box, suddenly is explosively awesome sounding. But let's not butter it up, okay? Season 1 of Living World, I still maintain, was not a fantastic format for the devs to do. I get their idea. I think they had an admirable approach. I think that it was really cool for ArenaNet after they released their MMO to think, hold on, expansions kind of suck. They suck for the consumer because people have to keep spending money, and they suck for us as the MMO dev because we just get big population spikes that persist for a little while and then everybody runs away again until the next expansion. They saw that it sucked in some regard for both ends of, this video game MMO supporting development, and they tried to do something new. I think that is admirable. I think the idea they had as well about having a fully living world where updates are constantly coming in and rolling out, and half your incentive is because stuff's going to go away. You want to be interior because the interior of today, the one that's happening now, is totally unique to your experience that will forge these wonderful memories in the future. Come on, it sounds good on paper, but it wasn't good. And I know it's been, 2 years now? But let's not forget, okay, how low quality some of these updates were, how specifically hidden and unobvious to many players some of those early updates were as well, especially while they were finding their feet around Flame and Frost. And let's not forget how stressful it was as a player to only have a certain window to experience something, and if you missed it, then you missed it for good. People got burnt out by that. Not only this, but ArenaNet still weren't very good at telling the story with Living World. I think Scarlet was, looking back, yes, had maybe some qualities, but an absolute Mary Sue and not a character many people got involved with. And so when you have a cast of characters and a story that people aren't too interested in, and kind of this high-pressure situation where people are being asked to play more content than they really care to, yeah, it burns people out. I specifically, as someone, as you all know, I play a lot of this game. I'm very invested in this game. Even in my position, I found I got heavily burned specifically out on Season 1 with all the mini-games and things that were getting added. I remember by the time the Bazaar of the Four Winds came out, one of those mini-games, those like PvP little activities, I never even tried because the devs were just doing too much. And I think that's a real shame. I don't think that worked for anyone really in the end. And I think a lot of people were right to as heavily criticize Season 1 as they did. Now, I get it, right? There's this idea that you can never please anyone with your MMO, and yes, right now, a bunch of people are going to be complaining on your official forum, but there's also a bunch of people that love it. And so I get the idea that, yeah, a load of people did actually like Season 1, and it's just that they were quiet, and ArenaNet listened to the loud people, and now the people who were quiet once upon a time are getting loud. But I don't think it's entirely that. I think that it is genuinely people just forgetting how kind of awful that situation we were in. So you ask me now, a lot of people have been, how do you feel, WP, about Living World Season 1? Would you like to see a return to that format instead of expansions? My answer is no. I totally understand a lot of people now saying, oh, expansions were a terrible idea. They should have kept with Living World. Either Living World Season 1 or 2. Obviously, they were handled very differently. A lot of people are saying, expansions just are not right for ArenaNet. They are not right for Guild Wars 2. They are an inherently bad idea. And I disagree with all of that. I think that ArenaNet implemented and dealt with Heart of Thorns in a terrible way the year before Heart of Thorns, and the 6 to 7 months after Heart of Thorns we've experienced, I think has all been terrible. But I don't think that all future expansions will necessarily be the same as well. I don't think that we should suddenly just kick back and swap back to Living World Season 1. It's exactly that kind of flip-flop thinking that probably put ArenaNet in a couple of the holes they're currently in, right? Let's actually stick with something. And I'm going to stick with the thing that is genuinely mass marketable to audiences outside of the existing Guild Wars 2 player base and might actually help grow the game. All right, next question, kind of an interesting one. Stephen Park said, hey, WP, here's a good topic for Q&A. What if Season 3, Living World Season 3, was set on the other side of the planet? What kind of foes would we come across? Would there be a new villain? What are your comments? Okay, so for those of you who don't remember, back during Season 2 of The Living World, when we got to go to the Dermot Priory Library, there was a carpet texture you, the player, were walking around on, which actually had a printed full version of the Tyrian world map, more than just the continent Tyria, lots of other places that we have never seen in the franchise. And on this tiny, like really low resolution texture was New Crichton. That Shaman and I got together, we did our absolute best to translate the labels that were on this map for the distant lands and tried to come up with some ideas of what the rest of the world was all about. I think we did a pretty good job on that translation. I would just like to reiterate though, even despite all that time that's passed, nobody else in the community, as far as I've seen, and I'd love to hear in the comments if I'm wrong about this, nobody else in the community has actually taken another good look at that map. Nobody put as much effort into it as Shaman and I did in that original release. And our translations were very rough approximations of what some of that text was. Basically, what I'm saying, guys, is there is still potentially new lore and information to find out about the rest of the world. We just need people to actually sit down and verify, double-check, triple-check what Shaman and I thought we read, and check some of the places we had no understanding on whatsoever. So, with that said, I'm going to leave a link in the description to that Reddit thread where all of that progress and stuff was going on. If you guys want to get involved with that, which would be really, really cool. But so, to look at what we translated, what we deduced, it seems there's some interesting areas. First of all, most disappointingly, were two kind of continental island regions, simply named after some artists or employees at ArenaNet, which kind of suggests that maybe all the names we saw in this map weren't supposed to be taken seriously. It was just some devs having fun, and they just sort of plopped their names on there, and it doesn't really mean anything. Like, one of the islands is called Daykim, I believe. In fact, it would be pretty crazy if at some point we could get an interview with that person, right? And hear more about the map. Well, beyond that, though, there were some more interesting ones. There was like a place that we believe is called Dawn, a place called Foundry, a place called the Wetlands, a place that I believe said Olympus, but seems kind of maybe like that might not be it. Really, all we can do, if you want to speculate about super distant story, obviously I don't actually think Season 3 is going to take place in such a region, but if you're going to, you've kind of got those place names to work on, and that's roughly it. Presumably there wouldn't be much Elder Dragon activity. It seems like the Elder Dragons kind of all moved around the current areas of the game worlds, perhaps because of the Bloodstones and this being the last magic during their last rising. And you could have totally crazy different stories. You could have, first races that are sort of somewhat linked to the races we understand, things related to the Kodan or things related to, perhaps where even the Char may have once upon a time migrated from, or relations to the Norn and so on. But then totally wild and crazy things out there too. Maybe the Giganticus lupicus haven't actually been extinct, but they're still alive out there somewhere else. There's even a place called, I believe it was essentially saying man-hating lands. Like the land, I think it was called Misandry, was it? And it's kind of the idea then, if that label we got is correct, that this is a land where, males are oppressed and, they are forced to kowtow to their female overlords. There's cool ideas. Actually, the main reason I picked this comment, though, wasn't to go back over that old topic and muse on it again for a little, as fun as that is. It's actually something interesting again happened with Shaman recently. He's been mining Guild Wars 1 stuff. And if you look at the video right now, he actually managed to find, through mining the maps, when he mined the Canthan world map from Guild Wars 1, turns out there's actually an extra area we, the players, never saw in-game, an extension to the mountain range way down in the southeastern corner. You see this? Now, this itself maybe isn't that interesting. Oh, there's just some extra mountains there that they had some art done for at some point, and then it never made it onto the actual in-game world map. So what would potatoes? Well, what I find really interesting about this, that does excite me, is this extra weird chunk to the Canthan map we were never meant to see from way back in Canthan development, which was, 2007 that they made this, 2006 that they made it. This extra mountain range is consistent with how they displayed the Canthan continent on that Dermond Priory carpet texture all the way forward in 2014. It's actually consistent. And so there's a serious suggestion there that not only do these maps we, the players, have seen forward-facing, but actually there may be, like, internal world maps as well that these maps we as players have seen, the devs have based off of some real other ones. That consistency is really fascinating to me, and I'm very happy to see that it basically panned out that way. So, I don't know, that was something I was thinking about recently. I saw your question. I had some stuff on my mind. I thought maybe I'd interest you in that. Again, guys, check out the link if you really want to do some of that translation. It's very hard, I warn you. But if you're up for a challenge, if you've been a bit bored with stuff, check it out. Our next question is from Ginjiro, who said, "Hey WP, I wanted to ask you if you'll do another 100% playthrough of the new Tomb Raider." Absolutely. I did want to throw this out there. Currently, we have about 10 episodes of a mini-series, kind of a wind-down series at the end of X2. While those are uploading, I am currently playing Tomb Raider. I'm actually going back through Tomb Raider 2013. If you guys don't know, that's a game that I already played on the channel. Already did a full comprehensive LP of it back in 2013, and hey, guess what? I've basically forgotten a lot of the details, so in preparation for the sequel, I'm going back through that. I'm at the point at the top of the radio tower right now and having a lot of fun with it. Once I've done that, I'm playing the new game, hell yes, and then yes, we're doing a run-through on the channel. I've kind of been embroiled in a lot of promises I made people on the channel over, a year now. I promised I'd be going back to X2, and then I've always said that after X2, I would do this new Tomb Raider game. I've been telling you guys that for a year that I'm going to do it. I'm not going to back out of that. So yes, that's what we're doing, and I'm very, very much looking forward to it. I've heard nothing but incredible things about that game, and that makes me very, very, very happy as a Tomb Raider fan. Next, we got a question from Cell, who makes me think of Dragon Ball Z, and he says, "Hey WP, what do you think about the possibility of adding non-elite specializations with future expansions? As they made the Revenant and the 9 elite specs, what's stopping them from making a new core spec and a new elite spec for every class in each expansion?" I'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, well, Sal, here's the thing. I am almost as sure that they're not going to do this as I am sure they're not going to add another profession. This came up on the stream today, and I'd like to reiterate what I said there. There are several reasons I don't believe we will ever see another profession come into Guild Wars 2. Chief among them, the fact that if they continue adding more base professions, it gets exponentially harder to give them all extra elite specs too as you go throughout extra expansions. So the workload is ridiculous in the first place. But here's another angle that you should think about this, and it ties into your specific question as well. Why, as a dev or a team of devs, would they ever add a core profession now when whatever thematic or mechanical idea they ever come up with in the future, it appropriately slots into one of the existing 9 as an elite spec? Okay, so what do I mean by that? Okay, you think in your brain right now of a profession you want to see, a thematic idea or a mechanical idea for a profession. So like a thematic idea, we did a competition on the channel before about pirates, right? You want to see a pirate profession come in the game? Well, hold on, can't you quite convincingly make a decent pirate elite specialization for, say, the thief and many of the other classes as well, for what it's worth? What I'm trying to say is every thematic idea you have for a profession, it slots into one of the existing 9. And especially when it comes to mechanical gameplay, it's gonna slot into one of the existing 9 too. So there's just no need, neither from a community's perspective or from the developer's perspective, in my opinion, to actually have a new core class. And so then we get to your question, why don't they add new regular specializations to the core classes instead of just elite ones, or even do both? And my reasons are very similar again. Number one, I think is unnecessary workload. But then you take the same logic. Give me an idea for a core specialization that only really works as a core specialization and not an elite one. And all right, so what do I mean by that? Think about Mesmer, okay? we're suggesting that we would add another core, a regular specialization to Mesmer, as well as an elite one with an expansion. Well, what's that regular specialization going to be? What's a niche for the Mesmer? Okay, pretty easy to think of one. Fast casting, right? Fast casting was an element of the Mesmer in Guild Wars 1. Maybe they want to bring that back into Guild Wars 2. All right, let's add a fast casting core specialization. Yes, you've got a lot of extra work to think of now because of all the potential synergies with all the other lines they have, and you've got to consider all of that. But also, hold on, why don't we just make the fast casting an elite specialization? It's a cool idea. Why don't we up the ante and push it to the max? Let's not add a neutered, weird version of fast casting. We've got an opportunity to add an elite version of fast casting. Let's do that. It's just more exciting. There's just no need to do a core one again. So that's kind of where my opinion currently lies. Hopefully I've explained that well enough. When they first revealed this system, before we actually got to see it in practice, I did kind of get titillated by the idea of Living World updates dropping in just regular core specializations, and then the elite ones come with expansions. But based on that idea of just, if they're going to add another line, let's just make it elite, right? Let's just make it as cool as it can be and make it elite. And that basic principle has kind of pushed me away from the idea heavily in more recent months. So hopefully that makes sense. Gorkham had a pretty interesting comment. I just like to throw out fun ideas every now and then. He says, I would love if they released T4 cultural armors and maybe a new race with T4 armors as well. This is, of course, because in the last episode we were talking about how I believe ArenaNet should be adding new races with future expansions, and how I believe that their solution to the whole armor problem is just to do a lot more cultural armor. I'm a thorough believer in that. And yes, T4 cultural armor would have been great. In my opinion, there are certain things that an expansion should have expanded on, should have offered. There should have been a pass done to all the basic systems in the game. Cultural armor is one of them. And yeah, I think Heart of Thorns was a perfect opportunity for the devs to add tier 4 cultural armor. I think the next expansion they add will be a perfect opportunity again for them to add tier 4 cultural armor. Let's face it, inflation has hit these things. People want new special armor dedicated to their race. People want more prestige armor sets. ArenaNet probably want more gold sinks, right? So let's do it. Let's have T4. It just makes sense. Just seems like one of those things that hit the chopping block because they didn't give themselves enough time for Heart of Thorns. It goes on a big pile of stuff like that, in my opinion. All right, next question is from Anim1, who says, Hey WP, so I've got a raid question for you. After defeating Matthias, and this is a very cool theory, by the way, guys. He says you can interact with a shard on the floor, presumably a bloodstone shard, with the description, the shard resembles a chunk of the bloodstone. It's imbued with energy. So Anim speculates, did us players just charge up a bloodstone shard with Matthias' soul? Do you think any future content or ideas might spawn from this? Also, does this make us evil? All right, this is a fantastic idea. I'll explain why I like this so much. First of all, no, I don't think it makes us evil. I don't think it has anything to do with that. But here's the thing. The raid did something quite peculiar. And I'm still very much looking to do a dedicated video talking about all of this stuff, guys. Don't worry. But it did something very peculiar in that you could go around and interact with some of the special things in the environment, yes. But the devs kind of doubled up. And what do I mean by that? Well, at one point in the raid, you can find a blade, a bloodstone shard blade, that quite clearly is suggesting people have been killed with this bloodstone shard and their souls have been sucked out. And it's kind of an object that lets you understand not only that the White Mantle are perhaps doing something very sinister, but that they, at the very least, know how to manipulate and work with bloodstone stuff, all right? This one item, this one prop in the raid teaches the players that already. All right, so the devs have done their job. They've set up that bit of the story, and then peculiarly, maybe not so peculiar, but we'll get to it later on at the end of the raid. Yes, once again we have another bloodstone shard after you defeat the final boss. And what's kind of weird about it, to me at least, is it's like, well, why did they double up like that? They've already kind of demonstrated it to us. Are they just hedging their bets? They just, they have two props that essentially tell you the same story, mean the same thing. It's just, they're doubling up just in case someone missed the earlier prop, a bit of redundancy there. Is that all that is? Maybe. But I kind of looked at that second prop a little bit closer and thought to myself, hold on, maybe this is trying to tell us something more. Why is this second bloodstone shard in this room after we kill the final boss so peculiarly placed in the very center of the room? Is it trying to tell us something? And I couldn't for the life of me deduce what it was that maybe it was trying to tell us. And in comes this question from Anim, and I think you could be right. Maybe that second shard of the bloodstone is there specifically to tell us this. It's imbued with energy, Matthias's energy. This actually does a lot for Matthias' character, because Matthias falls into the same problem that Gorseval does, in that when you first meet Gorseval, there's really very little story that the devs straight up give you. He's just a thing in a field, and he's angry, and you kill him, and then that's it. And then eventually you get more information about him as you find all these journals and so on around, and then that's where more of the bulk of the story comes in. Well, with Matthias, they've got set up this idea that he's the super powerful, super dangerous guy, and obviously the raid pays off in that because it's so difficult. But then he's kind of dead, and it feels like it's over a little bit quickly. Just like Gorseval, it feels like Matthias is over a little bit quickly. But if some essence of Matthias, is still around, if this story isn't totally over, if this shard is going to have some prominence in the future because a part of Matthias' soul has been captured and he will still wreak havoc somehow, then maybe that explains why it feels like his arc ended too quickly, because it's not actually over just yet. I like it a lot. I think that was a really, really cool idea. One of the more interesting lore theories I've read about Wing 2. And last of all, just to quickly tap things off, quite a basic little question here, but something fun to think about from DZM, who said, WP, what would you want this, and do you think that they'll ever release something like the bonus mission pack, but for Guild Wars 2? First of all, this is an obvious answer to me. The answer is no, unfortunately. I don't think they'll ever really release anything like the bonus mission pack. For those that don't understand, after Guild Wars 1 was basically done, before they started doing Beyond, which was essentially Guild Wars 1 Living World, and the devs really had a good grasp on the engine, and they had all the technological improvements from Eye of the North and so on. They sold as kind of like a few bonus little missions, the bonus mission pack, separately in their old gem store. They sold the players the opportunity to buy a couple more missions, and these missions were set in various areas of the past, told you some interesting stories that previous campaigns had hinted at. I don't think this is going to happen in Guild Wars 2 because, well, they've already found their feet with the Living World idea, right? And if you think about it, for a player who doesn't unlock Living World as it originally releases, it's basically the bonus mission pack format, right? Except slightly better, because you don't have to pay with real world money. You can earn gold in-game and then transfer that to gems and get it kind of for free that way. So it's already a lot like the bonus mission pack that they're doing. But then also the key thing about the bonus mission pack was it allowed the devs to tell stories they otherwise had no real way of doing within the universe, right? These are stories about a long time ago in some of their cases, like the Churiosa story, you know? But Guild Wars 2 doesn't need that excuse. It's got fractals. You know, if they want to tell an old story about an old place, like the Colossus fractal, right? Like some mythical, mysterious period of time long ago, then they will just do it in a fractal. So I don't think there's so much need. However, why did I pick the question then? Because I would want to see it. Given a few conditions, and I'll explain why I would want to see it. The conditions would be this. What was so cool about the bonus mission pack in Guild Wars 1 was the quality bump for the way that the missions played. See, Guild Wars 1 was so bogged down, and I really do believe this, its PvE was so bogged down by the fact it was all 8-man content. What the bonus mission pack did was it said, no, let's ignore that. We will have some like group content, like when you're running around as Churiosa, you have a lot of allies and you can gather allies in the missions and so on. But it was really, really designed and focused around that single player experience. And so there was a huge quality bump above the rest of the game. Not only this, but they were graphically superior to anything else that the devs had put out. They flowed much better than anything else the devs had put out. They had a better idea of how to, of mission length, as well as balancing the primary content for them. Plus, like, your bonus little objectives. They had excellent rewards with them. Essentially, these were, all right, though they weren't very big in scope, so you can't talk that big about them, but they were kind of like ArenaNet's best understanding and shot at how their Guild Wars 1 game engine worked, and the best they could make content with it. And there was real budget behind it. You know, the Beyond stuff that came later was also fantastic, but it was also very restricted because it was a very small team and they weren't necessarily going to get a huge profit off of it because it was all free things dropped in the game. That bonus mission pack had real work put into it, real love, real dedication, and it was on the heels of all the experience those devs had accrued through doing 3 different campaigns and an expansion. And there was a huge quality bump. So if you're saying to me, do you want to see a Guild Wars 2 bonus mission pack? If that Guild Wars 2 bonus mission pack comes with that same quality bump, we see another huge jump up, just as we saw. Oh my god! Yes, I would be on board with that. That would be the best Guild Wars 2 content we'd ever see. I would so be game for that. I would drop money on that in an instant. But again, let's bring us ourselves back down. I don't think it's going to happen. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video today. I hope the footage was at least somewhat interesting. And of course, happy April Fools, everyone.
Another adventure with your Oreo.
With your Oreo. We're not an Oreo, dude. We're not an Oreo.
I'm trying to make it
that's
work.
A black person.
I'm trying to make it work, okay? I could be two. You could go inside me, and you can be the cream filling.
Oh my god. Oh my.
It's fine. Let's just move on.
Can that be my nickname, Cream Filling? Welcome, guys. Today we're playing Star